now we are ready to start scripting for our bullet so that it can actually fire from the ship, now that we've got our prefab made for the asteroid and the bullet. So I'm going to come down here to script, do a create JavaScript. As you can see, it's created a new script for me, and I'm going to rename this for the bullet. And let's go ahead and edit that and be able to set the bullet up. First thing we need to do is be able to adjust the bullet speed, just like we've been doing for the player. So I'm going to do a var bullet speed, and again it'll be an integer. And then we just simply need to set it up for the bullet for its movement across the screen. So again, we'll use the amount to move times our time delta time. And then we just simply need to do the transform for the movement. Now again, we do need to use the space.self on this because we want it to be moved relative to the axis of the bullet, not in the world. So we want it to move forward based upon its current location XYZ and not on the world XYZ. So we do need to set space to self. One last thing to consider is the bullets. When we fire a bullet, we are creating an instance of an object that is going to exist until it either collides with something or the game's over. Now we can set it up so that after the bullet has gone a specific amount of distance, it will cease to exist. And I think for the time being, at this stage in the game, I'm going to just simply use that. I'm going to want to tweak this code that I'm about to enter before I actually go to publish this, but it will give you the basic idea of what we need to do for something that needs to eventually cease to exist inside the game. So I'll go ahead and enter this code real quick. I will note that the double vertical lines is an OR in the command. Instead of using the keyword OR, we use a double vertical, and that it does the same thing as the OR. So we've used a if-then statement to look at the current relative position of the bullet and check and see if it has gone beyond the location of 50 X, Y, or Z, and if it has, we'll destroy that game object or remove it from the screen. That should take care of what we're trying to do for this particular instance, the game object of course being the specific bullet that's moving around on the screen. There are better ways of doing this, but this shows for the beginning game developer exactly what we're trying to do and limit how many objects are on the screen at any specific time. The value of 50 is arbitrary. I just simply decided that 50 units. Now the 50 unit is probably a really bad situation as we go to move around on the screen. If the ship moves over to 50, obviously it then fires. The bullet's going to cease to exist very quickly. So it would be better if we set that 50 to a relative 50, but for the time being I'm going to stick with this just so that you get an idea of what the code's doing. So we'll save this and apply the bullet to our bullet prefab. And now in our bullet prefab we should have the script. There we go. Now we've got the script. Again, you're going to want to adjust the bullet speed. Currently it's set at 0. I'm going to go with 10 so that it should move a little bit faster than the ship and look like a bullet streaming on the screen. You'll want to play with this to find the right speed for your game and what you're trying to accomplish. So the next thing that we need to do is go to our player script and make it so that we can actually fire the bullet in the screen. So let's open up the player, and there's player. Need to go ahead and set this up real quick. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create a variable to hold the bullet that we just fired, or that we're going to fire. So we'll create a variable, we'll call it bullet, and it is a rigid body. And then we just simply need to add the code so that we can actually fire the bullet in the game itself. So we'll need to create a space firing. So I'm going to go down here to update. I want the space button to do my firing in the environment. We could also make the mouse left button do the firing as well. We'll use a simple if then to check to see if the input, if the person's pressed the space key. So what I just did is when we press the space key, we create a temporary variable that is a rigid body, which is basically our bullet. The bullet is an instance of, the temp bullet is an instance of bullet, and it fires from the current location of the ship with the current rotation of the ship, which gives us the ability to not have to worry about where we're locating from as we shoot the bullets at our enemy ships. So now we've got bullets in the environment, and we're ready to save this and give that a try. Oops, looks like I got a compiler error on my player script in line 32. Oh, there would be the problem. I left a curly bracket out after the if. Again, check the website, burtonsmedia.com/blog. It will have the full code listing on that site so you can see exactly what needs to be added, and there won't be any typos on that material. Okay, so we've got our environment. Oh, and I haven't assigned the values correctly. I'm getting the variable bullet of player has not been assigned. So let's go back and assign that real quick. If we go to our player script here, you can see now in the player script we now have a bullet in the script that says none rigid body. To associate the bullet with the bullet script, we need to drag the bullet over and onto that variable. Now the bullet is associated with the firing of the bullet. There you can see I can now fire my bullet, launch out into space. You can see as I fire these, it is creating them into the hierarchy. These are temporary variables, and if I click on one of them, you can see that it is traveling through space. Once it hits a Z of 50, of course, it is removed from the game, and that's why we added that little bit of code, so that these just don't continue to travel forever and force the engine to keep track of what's happening. Now, it'd be real nice if we had some sound effect associated with this bullet firing. So let's go ahead. I've created a few sound effects from this great little program that is available. It's called SFXR, and allows you to create quick sound files in the way exported in the WAV format on the fly and be able to use those royalty free. So I highly encourage you to download this program. It's very small and allows you to do some neat and nifties. I have created a few sounds from this that I'm going to use inside my game. They are just simply very simple wave sound files. I've created a fire and an explosion. So now I've got fire. Not real exciting, but it'll do for what I'm trying to create here. And I've also going to pull in an explosion sound effect, which I'm going to use in just a few minutes. Might as well go ahead and have it loaded as well. And these were created with SFXR, and that'll do what I need it to do. Okay, so we got the sounds, and we should be ready to associate all of that. So let's go back to the bullet. I need to associate with the bullet the firing. So we'll do that, and now you can see the audio source has been added to the bullet prefab for the fire sound. It is a 3D sound and will fire in the game. We'll launch so you can see that. Now every time we fire, it fires the sound effect as well, and so that's ready to go. Okay, so we're ready to add our enemy. Now we've got our asteroids here. I'm going to go over to my player and zip over, pull back a little bit so I can see it. And I'm just going to randomly place some asteroids in this environment and just simply drag them into the environment. And 5 ought to do for what we're trying to do here. Now you do want to look at the XYZ locations of these. These are way too far away from my ship for what I'm trying to demonstrate here. So I'm going to pull them in a little bit so that we can make this a little bit easier to find and shoot them. And I'm just choosing numbers at random. There we go. Now we've got our asteroids in the environment, and we got to make sure that our asteroid is set up. It does have a rigid body, so it's ready to go from that standpoint. We do need to turn on the collider. Right now our sphere collider, which is based on our assets that we've got in there, is not turned on. We want collision to be able to happen. So when something collides with the asteroid, it triggers an event inside the game, and we're able to then use the environment. Now the other thing that we need to do to our asteroid is that we need to give it a tag. A tag is used inside the game so that the game engine can quickly and easily tell what we just simply collided with. So I'm going to click on tag, add a tag, and click on the down arrow by tags, and where it says element 0, I'm going to name this asteroid. And so now we have our asteroid named. And this will be used for our identification when we start colliding with it. So let's go back to our bullet, and we need to go to the bullet script and be able to set up a collision so that when the bullet runs into the asteroid is destroyed. To do this, we're going to add a new function. This is on trigger enter. So when the item enters the collision space, or when the bullet enters the collision space of our sphere or asteroid, then this will be triggered. So on trigger enter. Then we need to know what collided. So we're going to call that other object. That'll be our variable to store what was hit. And it will get what that item it just hit from the collision or the collider event. So the first thing that we want to do is increase the player's score. They've been able to fire and hit an asteroid, so they need some points for that. So I'm going to call my player script, which I called player, and change the value of player score. So player.player score plus equals 100. This is a programming shortcut. I could have said player.player score equals player.player score plus 100. But by doing a player.player score plus equals 100, it says exactly the same thing. Add 100 points to the player score. Then we need to destroy the other object and the bullet. So we'll do a destroy other object dot game object. And that tells it to destroy the asteroid, and then we need to destroy the bullet as well. Now there's just one more thing that we need to do. We need to actually tell that we've just run into an asteroid and not the ship running into the asteroid or the bullet running into the ship or something like that. We need to know what we just hit. So I'm going to say if other object dot game object dot tag is equal to, and yes, you have to use double equal sign if you're doing a comparison, asteroid, which is the tag that we just created. Then I want it to do all of this. And just for neatness in programming style, next thing that let's try that. Make sure that we've got bullets happening and we're able to destroy the enemies that we've got on the screen. There's some of my ships. And we've got, definitely should have hit there, but nothing's happening. So we've got something going wrong. Great time to do a little bit of troubleshooting. So let's see how to do the troubleshooting inside the environment. One of the things I need to know is, did it actually hit? So I'm going to do a print collision. And the nice thing about doing a print collision is that it will show down here in the bottom of the screen every time a collision occurs or that event is fired. So we need to know, did that event fire? So there's my environment. And yes, a collision did occur, so something's going wrong after that particular collision. So let's go back to our bullet script. Our problem is after this line, so it has to do probably with if the other object.gameObject.tag is set equal to asteroid, then do all of this. It's probably that the game object tag is not registering correctly. So let's go back here to our asteroid. Oh, there's the problem. I created the tag, but I did not assign the tag to the asteroid. So now asteroid is now assigned to the asteroid. The tag asteroid is assigned to the asteroid. So let's see how it runs now. There we go. Bullet and the asteroid, or sphere in this case, disappeared from the screen. And as you can see, we've taken out 3 of our asteroids, and I've now got a score of 300. So that's a very, very good thing. Our bullet script is coming right along. We can go ahead and remove our error checking here. So the next thing that we want to do is that when the bullet hits the asteroid, let's have some kind of an explosion effect. To create an explosion, I need to set up an explosion particle system. So I'm going to go up here to Game Object, Create Other, Particle System, and that's going to create a particle system as you see over here on the side. And I'm going to go ahead and create a prefab and call it explosion. And I'm going to add the word prefab to the end so that I know that it is a prefabrication. It's usually a good idea. I didn't do that on Asteroid and Bullet, but it's a good idea to add _prefab so that you know that it is something that's already been created. So I've got my particle system here. Let's zoom in on it so you can see what's happening. And you can see it's in my scene. It's creating a lot of variables or explosion here. Now we can adjust this. Let's make it a nice bright red when it starts out. It goes to a deeper red, then maybe more into the orange-ish spectrum, and yellowish after that, and then white at the end. Okay, and I'm going to turn on the auto destruct, and it should be pretty close to ready to go. So let's drag the particle system into the explosion prefab. I can go ahead and remove particle system from the screen, from the hierarchy, and so there's our explosion prefab, and it should be ready to go so that it explodes. Now there's a lot of variables that are available to you in the explosion prefab on how big the explosion is going to be, how long it goes on. I did set auto destruct, and we also want to do one shot so that it does it all at once. If you don't do one shot, it continues to explode for, in this case, 3 seconds. That's a little longer than I want for it to happen, but you can play with all of these variables to get very interesting explosion effects built into the system. You can also use particle systems for doing all kinds of neat and nifties, smoke, fire, all kinds of good things. But we're just simply going to do a particle emitter for an explosion. So we've got our explosion set. We need to go back to script and add the explosion to the environment, and that's going to be done in our bullet script. So we need to add a variable for the explosion, and the explosion is actually a transform, so instead of a rigid body or an integer or something like that we've already been using in other cases. So we'll do a transform, and we want this to occur when we have the collision occur. So I want the explosion to occur before I delete the object. This will happen very quickly, so it shouldn't be evident, but let's start the explosion before it's actually been deleted from the screen. So I need to create a temporary explosion variable because this is an instance, and then our temp explosion will be set equal to an instance of our explosion. And just like the bullet, we're just going to set this up exactly like firing our bullet. Let's save that. Go to our bullet. You can see that now in your script you have an explosion with a transform. You need to drag the explosion prefab onto that, and then inside of our explosion we do want to make an explosion sound. So I'm going to drag explosion onto the explosion prefab, and now the explosion will automatically fire every time the explosion prefab is called. No errors in our script, that's always a good thing. There we go. We had a small explosion sound there in the background. So everything's working the way I want it to. And you can see you got a small explosion special effect. There we go. So everything's moving along exactly like we would like. We've now got explosion set on there, and we're ready to go to the next stage.